Welcome to Recruiting.work, a place to connect, communicate, and collaborate on all things recruitment. This session is brought to you by Outmatch. Just as Recruiting.work brings people in the talent community together, Outmatch brings recruitment technologies together, combining assessments, video interviewing, and reference checking software. They're creating a more holistic, more human hiring experience. Learn more at outmatch.com. Let's jump right into it. Thank you, everybody, for attending another episode in Let's Talk Recruiting, where peer practitioners across the industry all get together and talk about various topics. Today's session is called What Reporting Tools and Applications Are Being Used. I think analytics and getting into the world of AI, which is a whole other issue, but just around reporting analytics, what tools we're using, how ATSs are getting there or are they not. You got the introduction of Tableau and Power BI and all these BI tools coming into the play. So it's really interesting to see how, from a operations and recruiting perspective, how different companies are reporting and what they're reporting on. So with us today, we have John Burke out of the DC area. We have Melissa Medrano out of the San Francisco area, Mark Wolin out of Dallas, Paige Marsteller, did I get that right, out of New York City? Got it. And then Janelle Washington probably will be joining us. I know her schedule was difficult this morning, so she may be popping in a little bit later. But with that said, what we're going to do is sort of go around the table and talk about tools that we use and what we're doing with them. When you did sign up in the audience, I asked, hey, what tools are you using? The majority was kind of like a combination of their existing ATS and your Excel. So I think it's, for the most part, business as usual for the past 5 years is trying to get that out of it. I've done some reporting in the past. I'll show you some examples of mine where it's been Excel because I needed to massage the data the way I wanted. You know, I'm starting to learn Tableau and bring things into that around recruiting analytics. With that said, John, I'm going to jump over to you and kind of have you kick off the conversation. Before I do that, to all the audience members, one quick housekeeping item, and that's the chat area. I encourage any and all audience members to add any questions or comments or thoughts in the chat area. But before you do that, if you click on that chat area, you go to the bottom of that window, Zoom defaults to say to all panelists. I need everybody to change that to say to all panelists and attendees. So that way, if we do and attendees, everybody can participate in that conversation. So again, real quick, change that to say from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. All right, with that said, John, let's jump over to you and have you kick off the conversation.
Sure, thanks. Hello, everybody. My name is John. I'm with Great Minds in DC. Have been there for 4.5 years, and over those past 4.5 years, we've kind of gone through a lot of different phases. When I first started, we were, very small, did not have an applicant tracking system yet. And so we've kind of evolved through a lot of stages in terms of how that kind of affected our reporting. For a while, we did just rely on the applicant tracking system. But again, it wasn't very robust. So there was a lot of manual work and pulling things out into whatever other system you wanted to use. We did go through a Power BI phase where we thought, oh gosh, it's a great tool. We'll create all these fantastic things. But it was really what we learned through that process. For us, it was really more than what we needed. I mean, we went from under 100 4.5 years ago to over 1,100 now. We also, hire, current, like this year, we've got about 150, well, that's 225 now seasonal people that we'll hire in addition to that. So we do quite a bit. We've hired 100 people so far this year. So there's a pretty active for the size of our company in terms of the recruitment load. So having too powerful a tool wasn't that helpful. We've kind of backtracked and have done a lot of our reporting. We pull from multiple places. We also are in the middle of an experiment with Tableau versus some of the stuff that we're using right now, mostly in PowerPoint. Is just the charts function is working well for us. But I think the one interesting thing we're doing, because we're building out our IT team pretty robustly right now, we should hire 90 people or so over the next 2 years in the engineering side. And so they like their toys and they like to tinker. And so, for them, nothing's powerful enough or more fun or whatever. So we started doing something with them with Coda, where and then with a Zapier add-on, so that they can basically go in as like a little bookmarklet on, as they're going through LinkedIn profiles, sort of because again, we're happy to do some of the searches for them, but they like to kind of play with the toy. And so we've given them some ability to go in and yank in people from LinkedIn simply by clicking on their profile. It pulls into the Coda file. Coda, which operates kind of like a combination of Word, Excel, and database management tool. You can do like kind of one-line coding like you can in Excel on it, but it's a little bit more robust with what you can do. So we've been able to use that to pull reporting for a lot of the stuff that we're doing with the tech team right now. So we try a little bit of everything. And then, depending on how it works, sometimes, again, we've defaulted back to some of the more regular things for reporting. But I think that's a quick overview of just what we've been doing, if that gets us started.
Yeah, quick question for you, John, around your Power BI tool. Now, are you utilizing that to report or to show information for your recruiting team, or is it more of the audience as the business unit?
Yeah, that's outward reporting and I think that's what most of our reporting is. We'll, in our weekly calls, we go through some of the data. Usually most of the metric piece of that, we have a pretty robust audit function, and we have our systems guy come in and tell everybody how accurately they entered things and through the processes in our applicant tracking system, and how that, again, plays out so that we can report accurately. And, recruiters just love having to do stuff like that. So we bring it up every week. But the robust part of it, our reporting, is really outward facing and trying, and that's changed and developed over time too, as we've grown in terms of what we're really trying to influence with it. Started with the basic everything, whatever. But we're measuring something, but it doesn't really measure necessarily the core HR function and how well it's performing around talent acquisition, to where we really are trying to make sure that we're putting things in front of the C-suite that they can make good decisions on based on what their departments are doing.
Right. So to John and to all the other panelists too, when we talk about tools that we use for reporting, from my experience, the tool depends upon the audience. So if it's just within the recruiting team, Google spreadsheets or Excel on the web, so you can update data back. But if it's going out to the business unit or to the C-suite, that's when they like to see all the information in a BI tool, Power BI or a Tableau or a Domo. Does the tool depend upon the audience that the information is going out to in your experiences? I'll open this up to anybody on the panel.
Definitely, in my experience, I think usually we have to put together a PowerPoint presentation as well. So you have to massage all your nice spreadsheets into PowerPoint and spend a bunch of time making them look nice for your executive committee or whatever. But I think we also, I think there's also a number of manual metrics that we've been sort of taking into account for our executive committee as well. But yeah, Excel and Google Sheets and PowerPoint and Google Docs and stuff like that are pretty heavily used, at least in our hands. But we're a smaller company too.
Sean,
go ahead.
This is Janelle. I think I would echo what Melissa just shared. I mean, we massage a lot of our reporting and from different sources into a PowerPoint for our executives. So I think it just depends on the audience. We are really focused on creating dashboards for our recruiting teams through Tableau. We're massaging information from Vizier as we're going through a Vizier migration, where we're importing more information in Vizier as we purchase more modules through Vizier.
Vizier? I'm so sorry to interrupt.
So Vizier is a analytics tool where you can look at headcount data, you can look at turnover data, you can look at workforce data, and so it's a technology tool that you can actually import your ATS system and look at your hiring data, and it helps you. It's helping us tremendously look at our headcount planning.
Is that an HRIS or is it a like a Tableau type of thing, like a BI?
I would probably associate it more with a BI tool, but it's a little bit more powerful than that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, my understanding it's another direct competitor in that world. We're kind of stealing
Ah,
from the sales and marketing world to meet
Yeah.
our needs. So that's how I
aha.
always see that. So around that, you mentioned, Janelle, other sources of data, not just the ATS, right? And typically when I saw a lot of people, oh, we just report out of our ATS. Well, okay, that means you're only getting, rec data.
Mhm.
That's probably open rec data versus historical or what have you. This goes out to Janelle and John, the whole panel too. The other sources, like, are you pulling from your HRS? And if you're tracking hiring against plan, which is kind of a project I'm working on right now, where we're projecting through the end of the year. We've gotten positions in the workday. Now we need to associate the workday recruiting back to the HRS and where are we
Yeah,
against plan? Because the managers only look at HRS, not the recruiting.
exactly.
How are you pulling in multiple sources or multiple purposes, right? And let's not forget DE&I and all the other stuff that's going on. And are we packaging that together?
Yes, manually.
Yeah, Sean,
Sorry.
I wish I had the magical answer because we're going through that migration right now. And how do we, pull in the financial forecast, so the financial planning, and then associate it with our hiring. And hiring is dynamic. So you have your external hiring, you have your transfers within and without, and so we're looking at all of that from an organizational unit. So all of the different business units within our organization, so that we can see how we're tracking to our hiring targets. Are we meeting our hiring targets? Because if you look at it just from the perspective of your hires externally coming from within, you also have to take into consideration attrition. You also have to take into consideration your internal movement, because that's could potentially leave a deficit for the organization, that org unit or business unit where people are transferring out. And as you're bringing people in, you're still at a deficit, right? And so we're starting to go down that journey to look at it holistically, and not just, this is the headcount plan or forecast plan, and these are the hires that we're bringing in externally, because you have to look at all of the movement from within. And I will say that Vizier gives you visibility to that, and it curates that information for you, so you're not pulling from all these different data sources. You can just go to Vizier. But we're going through that journey of really building out Vizier, so that can be more of a single source of truth versus going through all of these different technology tools.
To mark in the page at your companies, are you utilizing multiple data sources, for lack of better words, too? Kind of what Janelle was speaking to?
Yeah, so quick introduction, Paige Marsteller. I'm in actually Buffalo, New York, but part of the New York City group here, working for ACV Auctions, which is a startup in the tech auto space. And we've grown very, very quickly. So, we were founded 5 years ago. We're approaching 2,000 employees now. We've acquired a couple of companies. We're looking to hire 1,000 more people this year across the country. So company has grown incredibly fast. When I started about 2.5 years ago, we were on Bamboo HR, which is optimal for companies of about 100 people. So that didn't last very long. We've been on Greenhouse for about 2 years, and we actually did just purchase their BI connector. So we can now, export the data to Redshift, kind of manipulate it in BigQuery and then get it into Tableau.
What's Redshift?
That is
Paige, what's Redshift? I've never heard that one.
Amazon Redshift is a data warehouse.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So we are in the very early processes of starting to build dashboards out in Tableau. I'm curious to see if anyone on this panel has a dedicated talent or people analytics resource in their company, because kind of what we're running into right now is I am spending my days recruiting and my nights building dashboards. And so we are pulling, our recruiting data from Greenhouse. Greenhouse actually has a great tool that connects the Greenhouse reporting into Google Sheets, so that it can, update automatically, and we can have, real-time numbers in Google Sheets dashboards, which is what we've been kind of living off for the past couple of years. And then we use AltiPro as our HRIS, which we also have that, connected with Tableau. And so our end goal, hopefully when maybe our hiring slows down a little bit, which I don't think will ever happen, but end goal is to, have those connections set up so that we can filter the data from AltiPro and Greenhouse into Tableau. And we've been kind of in the process of making sure that when we hire someone in Greenhouse, we have an opening ID attached to them, which then gets entered in AltiPro, so that once that data is all in Tableau, we can, kind of easily line it up to make sense of things and compare it against our hiring plan.
Now, Mark, you're working off Google Sheets too, and I do want to throw in that piece where if I ever hear the Google spreadsheets, that means, hey, recruiters are doing all the reporting. If you have a BI tool, you may or may not get a resource to utilize that BI tool. But Mark, with your team, you're using Google spreadsheets, right? Did I recall?
It was part of it. And so to Paige's question, yes, we do have a dedicated operations team at SiriusXM Pandora as it relates to dashboard reporting and just the HR tech side for what we do. So we do have a dedicated team on that side. We utilize a JobVite for our core ATS, and we have Workday for our HRIS. And JobVite, one of the reasons that we moved forward with them at this point last year is they had recently acquired a talent analytics company. I think it's called Talentegy or something like that. And it's a pretty robust platform that not only gives you your time to fill and your candidate metrics, but it also compares across other utilizers of the JobVite platform from other companies. And what your performance is looking like versus some of your peer level companies. And then it also allows you to incorporate that information into, I think what Janelle's point was around performance tracking. And so based on certain measurable actions on the ATS side, it incorporates it into your HRIS system for tracking purposes there as well.
How about everybody else? Do you have an operations person that is besides a scheduling coordinator? Is typically what you see in what's operations. Do you have some HR analysts? And I'm with you, Paige, on this, where I'm working on a project where we're building out in Tableau. As soon as one business gets a taste of it, oh, hey, we like this and we like this, and then we'd like ours to look like that.
Mm-hmm.
Utilizing. Go ahead.
We have HRIS analysts who are working, solely out of AltiPro, and Cognos is the reporting tool in AltiPro. So I really don't touch that. I recently has kind of given talent analytics an addition onto my title because I was spending so much time working on it. So we don't have a dedicated resource yet. We do have a central analytics team that helps me out when I need it, but I think the company is just not at a point yet where we need a dedicated FTE for that. But I think that in the future, it's something that we'll probably need, because with how, much hiring ACV is doing, we're sending weekly updates to the executive team that is then shared with the board. So a lot of decisions are being based on that. So as much as I wish we had a dedicated resource right now, we don't. I call that kind of my second full-time job.
So Paige,
Yeah.
I'll answer your question. I do have a dedicated resource, a data scientist. And so she creates all of that information. So we work collectively to provide all of those dashboard reports and reports up to our executive team.
Yeah, at my last company, we were large enough that we had a whole talent ops kind of data analytics team just specifically for our, it basically we would look at, pull from our HRIS as well as from the ATS. And so they kind of would do that, but they kind of kept a lockdown on, why do you need this data and who are you going to share it with? And we will only release just this much for you. And so here we're doing everything at my company now, NGM, we're a small biopharma. So we're doing everything by hand and kind of manually. So that actually resulted in us, because we had implemented Lever last year from Silk Road, which was absolutely awful. Silk Road was, and Lever is a great system as far as an ATS goes, but it's one of those, because it's super easy point and click, but it doesn't have any reasonable reporting metrics. Like even to do time to hire, it doesn't allow you to do that, which is crazy. It doesn't allow you to, it doesn't give you like a recruiter dashboard, like a nice snapshot of all your recs and stuff. And so basically after having it a year, and my whole team changed during that time anyway, and I came in and Lever was already chosen. So we decided to switch to Greenhouse, particularly because of the reporting capabilities. Just because even our basic funnel metrics, we weren't able to, kind of map as well in Lever. So, we're definitely looking at time to hire, source of hire, of course, diversity metrics, and then, hires and departures, declines, the reasons for declines, as well as, of course, we're mapping out agency spend. And then the other thing is, we do need reports from the HRISs because we need the internal equity reports so that we can understand kind of where everybody at that same, in those same roles at that same level are needed, so that when we're hiring external people into our company, we're making sure we're being not only competitive to market, but also that our internal people are paid competitively to market. And so I think, for us too, even our headcount planning is done by spreadsheet. So it'd be great to be able to, like we used Hyperion at the last company I worked with, and it kind of fed directly into Workday. The Workday fed directly into the Workday HRIS. And so it made it a little bit nicer.
Melissa, are you utilizing just Greenhouse's canned reports? I know they released a report builder tool a couple months ago, or are you exporting any of the data to Google Sheets or to a BI tool?
Right now we're in Sandbox, so we're just setting up Greenhouse, but essentially, I think what we were going to be doing is sort of exporting to Excel. But if there are better ways, of course, I'd love to hear best practices, or if there are free tools, because each of our tools, we have to okay, I got to subtract that out of my budget. And, so that's the difference between a smaller and larger company is, before we would just be like, I would like this report and I would like it to look like this. And then the clouds would part and the tech people would give you that report. And here it's not so much like that. So
Yeah.
it's for us, it's all hands on deck. We're all crunching the numbers.
I can sympathize with you. It took us quite a while to get approval to purchase the BI connector. So yeah, feel free to shoot me an email if you ever need someone to talk to about Greenhouse.
Appreciate it. No, thank you so much. It's definitely, we're running and sprinting as well as implementing, the third ATS in as many years. So it's super fun.
Sorry to see you go through so many ATSs, but it's certainly good to see, hey, it's not working, let's move on. Right?
Yeah.
I like to do that.
We did the same thing at Gilead. So we had Virtual Edge when I got there, and then we implemented Avature, and then we implemented Workday and kept Avature as our CRM. And so it was like the same thing where literally the 6 years that I was there, we went through 3 ATS systems.
Wow.
I've been through a lot of rollouts and a lot of end user testing.
So kind of around reverse engineering, right? We talk, and I've been putting in the chat some samples that I've done in the past with dummy data for viewing. I love to see like a good dashboard or a good style and then kind of reverse engineer it. So whenever I have samples, I put it out there to get feedback from people. Well, we do it this way. And this goes into utilizing a Power BI tool, or specifically Tableau, which has sort of been my focus. And they have a thing called public.tableau.com where people can share. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to put some stuff up there and give me some real feedback, good or bad, coming back at me. Does anybody in the group share their type of reporting or anything like that? I know the Tableau HR group did a presentation at their group on Tableau HR internally. So you got to see how they were doing it, of course, with dummy data. But does anybody do that? And Janelle, I'm looking at you because Medallia, I'm really interested to see what Medallia does, being who they are.
Sean, and I think I shared with you, I'm 5 weeks into Medallia, so I'm just kind of like hitting the ground and we're making some moves. And I was listening to Melissa because we use Lever at Medallia. So we've been, in the 5 weeks that I've been here, we have been, my data scientists and I have been, putting up all these dashboards and working to get things migrated in Vizier with our analytics group. And so, we've been doing a lot, and I think that's why my hair is kind of wash and go right now, because we've been just kind of hitting the pavement and moving quickly. And so, Sean, I'd love to connect with anybody on the panel and talk about some of the reporting that we are starting to carve out, because we have reporting. We're looking at, what are we reporting to different groups? We have our reporting to run, talent acquisition and what we want to measure ourselves on. And then we have our reporting to the business. So we have two different, kind of reporting mechanisms in which the information that we're sharing and what's relevant to the audiences that we're providing that information to. And so, and we're creating recruiter scorecards and different things like that right now. And so I'd love to, talk to people on this panel, or, if we have a group where we start to talk about, what analytics are important to us. I'm happy to share what we're creating and and some of the dashboards that we're creating, and be a thought partner to anyone, because I think that's how we kind of evolve as talent acquisition professionals, and really show our value to the business. And so, yeah, definitely, I'd love to. One of the things, Sean, I also wanted to ask, if I may, of the panel, because quite often we talk about, how we report out our activities and how we align it to the business, right? And we look at recruiters and, recruiter performance. I'd be curious, because I haven't heard anything in regards to if people are using sourcers and how they're measuring their sourcer success, because that can be, different in different organizations. If I could pose that question.
Totally. That's one thing we've struggled with here, especially as a smaller company. So, my last company of 11,000, we, had a whole sourcing team, and they were aligned to different recruiters, and they could work, so one sourcer might work with a couple of different recruiters and have, kind of a blended desk or whatever. But it was pretty much, again, even at that company, more manual. But here we're really trying to figure out, especially in Greenhouse, it allows you to sort of say, this person sourced this person, or this person referred this person. So I like that. But here we've just kind of been noting it manually, keeping track of it on Excel. Are you all doing the same thing? I love hearing all this, by the way.
Melissa, happy to. I feel like we should hop on a call.
We should totally have a group.
I helped implement Greenhouse, so I feel like I could work there at this point. I know so much about the system, but yeah, this is actually something that we're looking at right now, because we really want to know the ROI for the different, tools that we're putting money into, right? So we don't have a dedicated team of sourcers. Our recruiters do sourcing ourselves, but there actually is a tool with Greenhouse that connects right to LinkedIn Recruiter, so that you can export candidates right from LinkedIn Recruiter into Greenhouse. It's very, very easy. You can actually see in LinkedIn Recruiter if the candidate's already in Greenhouse. And then you can, choose their application location or their source as, LinkedIn prospecting versus, LinkedIn ad, LinkedIn applied. So we're doing a lot of reporting right now based on kind of source of hire, and, do we want to put more money into Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever other sourcing tools you might be using?
Okay.
And I can add to that, Janelle, too. First, I would clarify, what duties are your sourcers responsible for? A lot of places, the sources are just tasked with go out and find talent and bring them in, right?
Yeah.
The model that's worked best for me in my experience is not only that, right? You go and find external talent who not applied, you bring them in. So a KPI that we would utilize on our sourcers is interviews created, right? I don't care if you found 50 people, if only 5 are good enough to get an on-site interview or a Zoom interview, that's what mattered.
Right.
So we would track interviews created per week. And then a lot of places where if you have a resume black hole where people are applying, it's not getting touched, a KPI that I track is per rec unreviewed rate, meaning what percentage of the applicants are sitting at that first review stage.
Yeah.
So the best models that I've seen is where the sourcers also manage that stage of the applicant process. So they're finding people and they're tasked with screening resumes, doing phone screens, and then handing off to the manager or to the recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So we would track unreviewed rate. And the goal would be at the end of each Friday, we should have 5% or less unreviewed rate, meaning everybody's getting touched. Doesn't mean they're going forward. It just means they're getting screened and then moving forward or not. And that basically keeps that top of the funnel clean.
Yeah.
So you have no applicants in the process and you have no interviews going on, hey, you better sort of turn on the lever for outbound recruiting and stuff like that. So those are my key 2 KPI sourcing metrics: number of interviews created per week and then unreviewed rate at the end of the week.
Okay.
Resumes.
Yeah. We were trying to see if we could simplify it to, submittals to hiring manager interview. And so I was just curious to see what others were doing in that regard, because, it's we're really trying to, determine, do we need a sourcing team or not? Can we look at technologies that would minimize our need for a sourcing team? So I was just curious to see what others were doing.
Yeah, we have a dedicated sourcer for both the G&A recruitment team as well as technical recruiting, and they leverage a combination of Avature, the project folders within LinkedIn Recruiter, as well as Google Sheets for actual external reporting. But similar to what Sean was mentioning, it's about outreach, but also interviews scheduled from that outreach. So it's a combination factor for us.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to show you something really quick. Since we're talking about metrics and sourcing, this is a scorecard I put in the chat session. This is a scorecard that I've done at all kinds of companies when I was consulting. It's called the Weekly Recruiter Scorecard. If you guys are doing recruiter scorecards, I hope you're doing it weekly, not monthly or annual or quarterly, but weekly. This information by rec, by recruiter, this could be put into a Google spreadsheet or into an Excel on the web, where the recruiters would go in and red light, yellow light, green light the recs weekly. And then the head of TA would sort of get that quick overview. And this would be utilizing their one-on-ones. But this information would give like a quick, everything that's going on with every rec. And the recruiters do not have to enter in any data in spreadsheets or PowerPoint. As long as you update that candidate status in your ATS, it pulls from there. I won't sit on this too far, but I'm just saying these things, when I do this, there's a shock period for like 2 to 3 weeks from the recruiters getting used to it. And then after that, it's smooth sailing and it's just part of the game. And it's a great way for a TA leader to understand everything that's going on in one quick view. I just want to show that. I shared that in the chat area. But when it comes to, that's what I was asking about, who's the audience? And is it the business or is it recruiters? If it's your recruiting team, run your reports weekly. And then just get into that habit. And that's how you can just sort of sail that ship pretty straight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say that that the JobVite was pretty much a time savior once we moved to them last year, just because of the external reporting capabilities, because we did used to do all that manually up until the last year. And that was a monumental effort each week that recruiters did not look forward to.
I mean, you could be spending 2 to 3 hours on a Friday afternoon updating reports, and that's like your recruiters will hate you. So.
Well, and Sean, I think it just goes back to the ATS that you leverage, right, and the capabilities of that ATS and how we enable that ATS, because most of the ATSs that are out there on the market are software as a service. And so it depends on, how you build your workflow in the organization. So, and making sure that your recruiters are following that workflow. So if you have steps that are required, then those are the steps that you're typically going to try to report on or report off of. And I think it's really important on how when you're implementing an ATS, and I've heard, a lot of people on the panel that have recently gone through an ATS implementation. Some of us may be in the process of going through one or considering going through an ATS, but I really think how we design it and what we want our reporting capability to be should be top of mind as we're developing these ATS or implementing these ATSs in our organizations.
Yeah, 2 clicks is one too many to update.
Yeah, right. But if you don't have clean data or valid data, then it's hard to report on that. And then that's where it becomes a manual daunting task.
That's why I emphasize that weekly duration. It's a pain in the butt to get used to, but once you do, okay, yeah, I got to do it. But to everybody's point, hey, it's got to be quick and easy. And all I ask for my recruiters that I support is, I just need you to update the candidate status. That's it. Then I'll take care of the rest. And usually I'll get buy-in on that. But if you work in some systems, well, it takes 4 clicks to be able to do that. So it's, yeah, to your point, it's kind of about that ATS too.
Yeah, hopefully you're getting that end-to-end feedback from folks that are interacting within your ATS, because if it's just someone that's focused on the reporting and data side, that experience might look a little different than what the recruiter wants as well.
Yeah.
Good point, Mark.
Does anybody ever work on an ATS that they love?
I love JobBite. I've been here a little over 10 years now, and I've been on ADP, Virtual Edge, iCIMS. iCIMS was pretty good as well, but
Yeah.
since we moved over to JobBite, I find it pretty good actually.
I used to like ours. I mean, I still like it. It's just we've kind of outgrown it.
Okay.
And so, but recruiting, it's in Europe, out of Europe. That's another odd thing. They have some odd things because they're European, but it was cool tech at a time. But yeah, kind of outgrown it.
Janelle, any ATS stands out to you?
You know, I think the one that I love the most was iCIMS. But I know that we're starting to look at some others. So iCIMS so far has been the one that has stood out the most to me.
There's a question in the chat area about rec load. And they said they've had between 75 and 135 recs, which just totally blows my mind. I hope it's one evergreen rec and it's 75 fills, but around that, getting back to, hey, is your data clean? I've yet to see a system that will look like a spreadsheet and allow me to click, update them all. It's all this one by one, by one, by one. Has anybody seen an ATS where it works kind of like a spreadsheet versus updating a single record every time? Has anybody ever seen one? No, me neither.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for it, but that to me is the genie in the bottle. If you allow a recruiter to look at the full rec load, because a lot of it is just red light, yellow light, green lighting, and then updating candidate statuses. I know, and tell me if this is true for any of you guys, has Trello entered the hiring process for you? I typically see it where engineers, they like Trello, so they want to hire through Trello. And it, of course, doesn't sync back to the ATS, so there's like double effort by the recruiters. Has Trello entered your worlds?
Not for that, but it's kind of like what Coda has become with the IT team. It's kind of, we're doing something for them in a separate system because they like to play in it.
Can you elaborate on what that is? I've never used that.
Yeah, it's like I say, the best way I can describe it is that it's like a combination of Word, Excel, and a database management system. So you can treat it like a document, but everything can grid out like Excel, and you can create formulas and do, they have their own coding language, and I don't think they have a name for it. But kind of like, but it's easy to get some basic functionality and reporting out of. It's one of a million things out there right now. So,
it's CODO. Is that how it's spelled?
CODA, Coda.
Then around ATS, as I asked, do you love any? Is there anything, I won't use the word hate, but are there any that you really dislike?
I'm curious what the positivity on iCIMS is, and because I've heard negative from candidate experience, but I'm wondering if it's just really great on our end and not on theirs, or if I've heard wrong.
My experience with iCIMS, John, is that they have a really good CRM capability, as well as some of their reporting, the dashboard capability. You can build it out for your different audiences. So, again, I think it's how you set it up in different organizations. But that's been my experience, with iCIMS. I'll just be brutally honest, Sean. I think, you can find some favor in all different ATSs and some negatives. And so, I don't think there's any one perfect ATS. And in some instances, depending on the company, you may build on top of that ATS. I mean, I've seen where, you use iCIMS and I think it's Phenom. It's not Phenom People anymore, where you start to have your career page and you can look at, your source of hire and your candidate movement. So your views and clicks and different things like that. So I just think it's, how an organization builds out that ATS and what they either integrate with that ATS to to compensate for what's missing, because I don't think there's one perfect ATS out there. I haven't seen it, and I'd love to hear if anyone else has seen one that just kind of masters everything. I just haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the master either. I will say to ISIMS, I've used ISIMS before, and from an administrative perception, I liked it. And then I did like there on the back end, you can I can't remember what they called it. Maybe talent pools. There's some people call it talent pools, some people call it pipelines.
Talent communities.
Yeah. The ability to tag and organize and
Yes.
re-engage candidates. I like that in ISIMS too.
Yeah.
I've done integrations with Salesforce into ATSs, so I had a full-blown CRM sales and marketing piece to it. That was kind of a bigger project. I will say around ATSs, a lot of it has to do with the person you get from tech support from the ATS company. I've had some good ones that made everything great, and I've had some bad ones that left me very frustrated. I will say this, Mark, to JobBite, there are some subtle nuances on the back end administrative that if you don't check, you don't get the ability to do on the front end. And it took me a year to find out that when they set it up, they never checked all the boxes.
Yeah. Well, we dealt with that as well, that we had some cleaning up to do once we fully implemented. So I know that our ops leader was busy with those type of discussions. But as it relates to ISIMS, yeah, I like the UI, the workflow. I have heard about the candidate experience. It really depends on how you build out the application process. And so we did get complaints that it was pretty laborious, but that was kind of our fault in how we had built out the application itself.
Mhm.
All right. We've gone a little bit over time. I know two people had hard stuff, so they dropped off. I do want to share kind of a big picture thought here. Hold on one second. This is sort of I mentioned the public Tableau. I want to share something here, get people's thoughts. One of the things that I've real quick, can you guys confirm that you see a thing called the HR data story in front of you? Okay.
Yes.
From all these roundtables and discussions about recruiting and this, that, and everything is growing. To me, I figured out, hey, it's not just recruiting, it's all aspects. It's a bigger story. So I'm starting to play around with, I call them the dots of data, trying to connect them, where you have recruiting, you have HR, you have learning and development to kind of, once you got people, to build them up, to lower that attrition rate and increase your promotion rates. And as we get into it, let me click here. These are kind of the dots that I'm at. I've already added 3 more around contingent workforce, diversity in suppliers. But there's all these little dots connecting. That's what I was kind of asking. Who's using BI tools and what sources and what's the audience? If you get a chance, I put this in the chat. I'd love to get people's feedback on how your role is expanding when it comes to kind of telling that story. And it's not just about filling recs, it's just a lot more perspectives, like terminations, how many of my recs are going to be backfill, if I know my pre-planned count is this, those types of things of pulling in different information, different places, and then bringing it together in an easy to view summary data that you can go talk to your CEO about, stuff like that. So I think it's just one of the challenges that people in TA are going to be matched with. I don't see the HR business partners answering the question. I don't see the L&D doing it. I really think it's going to be put on the plate of the TA leaders, because you kind of see everything from soup to nuts and you got to deal with everything. So it's the biggest impact is in your role, I think. With that said, I'll end it here, but I did want to give a sort of a quick, any other final thoughts or comments to the panelists that you'd like to add?
I was going to ask you, Sean, what applicant tracking system do you use? I don't remember.
So I'm working on Workday right now. So Workday HRS and Workday Recruit piece of it. So I'm working on a project on that. I've worked with maybe 5 in my lifetime. JobBite was my last one, Mark, with you. Before that, it was iSIMS and then Taleo. And I never changed like Melissa did. I work in the operations role, so I got to make it work. To your point, Janelle.
Yeah.
There's no perfect one.
Yeah.
Something's gonna be missing something. Let's just make it work.
Yeah.
Revisit when that contract ends. See if we want to switch out.
Right.
Mark, Janelle, any final thoughts or comments?
Sean, I think you brought up a good point in regards to, again, looking your dots. And I think one thing that we don't look at is, how many hires do we make that are internal hires versus external? So the percentage, right? What's the percentage of replacement? Because when we start looking at what is our TA capacity model. How many recruiters are we going to need? Quite often organizations just look at our growth, right? But it's not, as you start to grow, if you go from that 500 company, now 500 employee company, now you're a 2000 employee company, and then you're continuing to grow, you really have to take into consideration, now that you have more people that you have to deal with, you also have to look at your attrition, right? Because your attrition is going to come into play. And I think as, you know, TA professionals, we really have to look at holistically, work with our HR business partners, work with finance, as well as our business leaders that we're working with for our different business groups, so we can look at that holistic approach and show the data so that they understand, you know, that hiring from the outside is more work on our recruiters than doing an internal promotion or transfer from within. And so if we're doing more hiring and we have to do more external searches, that's more capacity on our recruiters, and it's more of a recruitment. We have to hunt for that talent versus we have the talent internal.
Question back to you on that, and I totally agree with you. If you're a recruiter and hey, it's all about internal mobility now, and you go and try and recruit somebody for a position, what does their manager think of you?
Yes.
Right? If you're trying to, so you got to deal with all that. And
yes,
is internal mobility an LOD thing? Is it an HR thing? Is it a recruiting thing? That's probably an everybody thing, but who's leading it? So I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I really look forward to, hey, how do you tell that story and bring them together to a point where you can go forward, right? I don't know if anybody's got the solution yet. I think we're all kind of working our way through. I will say one thing about the whole, like if we look at D&I recruiting, are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul? So we're, you know, or are we upscaling and uplifting, not just in our internal company, but as everybody doing it as a whole, and things like that. So interesting time to be in TA, in my opinion.
yes.
The world is changing. We're going with it in a good way. Mark, any final thoughts or comments?
No, I think it was a good discussion overall, and so I think I'm good on my side.
Got it. Yeah, I will emphasize, if you can get somebody to support with your HR analytics or recruiting analytics, get that budget and get that person, because it's a whole world out there to work on. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'll let you go, and I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.